In the Arctic's minus 17 degrees Celsius ice and snow, you can toss in a gillnet and pull up a hefty pike. But the next second, one wrong step sends the $500,000 prize almost in his hands away. The 2026 season of Ruins Alone in the Wilderness has begun, and the contestants have survived 50 days in the Arctic. So far, almost every contestant is actually living pretty well. Like, the caribou hunter has made survival a vacation, with his shelter's chimney as his only headache, while Nero has made the Arctic his fish farm.
过上了吃喝无忧的日子。Aaron 靠套索陷阱成了本季唯一的新贵。
Andrew and Jax have clawed out of hunger. Who comes out on top is wide open. Because in more than 10 years of watching, I've never seen contestants whose lives actually improve after winter hits. Next, I'll spend about 25 minutes walking you through this latest Arctic episode in detail. Nero's slowly settled into life out here. Unlike the others, who plan out every minute, he doesn't push to chase the clock, but works in tune with his feelings, ticking off survival plans step by step. Today, Nero returns to the lakeshore to check the gillnet and fish trap.
Another coney into the mix.
Well, now, there's another haul today. The gillnet has caught a big whitefish. Nero cracks the ice and hauls the gillnet from the water. He knows he might have his hands on $500,000. Seeing how things are going, he can't imagine losing. Nero crouches down and cleans the fish, because in this deadly cold, every bit of food matters. He scoops the fish oil and liver into an iron pot, but then chucks the fish head into the water as bait. So wasteful. Roland, who brought down a musk ox, wouldn't dare waste like that. Nero resets and tidies the gillnet. This net is now his most valuable tool. Yanba has basically become his biggest edge for the title. So before heading back to the shelter, Nero decides to give the gillnet one last look, to be sure it's set right. The next moment, that misstep jolts Nero into panic. He scrambles and smears blood on his pants, since blood soaks up the moisture from his pants and leaves the skin underneath much drier. Before he can check the gillnet he's set, Nero grabs his pack and heads to camp. It's minus 17 degrees Celsius out, and in this cold, wet clothing is more dangerous than the cold because water strips heat from the body. The clothes meant to keep him warm become a cold, clammy shell that drains his body heat. Because he always lights the fire before heading out, Nero can warm up right away as soon as he gets back to the shelter. And getting a hot serving of fish not only fills his stomach, it's a good way to drive out the cold in this environment.
That's really good. Really, really good. Oh, that's good, yeah.
After this scare, Nero sees even more clearly that out here in the Arctic, true survival experts aren't the ones who never make mistakes, but the ones who prepare in advance before danger appears, and who can quickly find solutions after something goes wrong. His gillnet is still waiting beneath the frozen lake, but at least for now, Nero has made it safely back to his shelter, and this accident hasn't thrown off his rhythm. Instead, this just shows again that it's those seemingly mundane survival routines that really keep you alive out here. Once the stomach is full, emotions suppressed by survival begin to resurface. Alone in this wilderness, with no one around, she has time to pause and rethink her relationship with her father. As a kid, Nero used to feel like her dad was never really there for her, because in her memories, her father was always busy, always at work. Back then, she was just a child, longing for her father to spend more time with her, hoping for more attention and recognition.
多年以后，等到尼禄也当了父亲，他明白过来。
That his father back then had his own helplessness too, to support the family. His father threw himself into work, and that lack of time together wasn't because he didn't love them, but because he was protecting his family in another way. The younger Nero always hoped his father would say, "I love you." As he does, Nero's emotions start to spiral. The father he once resented has become the one he longs for most. His voice catches in his throat, and his eyes slowly well up with tears. Even as he fights to hold himself together, the tears in his eyes finally spill over, streaming down his cheeks. Alone in this remote wilderness, he drops the grudge and sees the love that was always there in his father's silence.
I thought about my dad. Internally, I've been very critical, resentful. I just wish that he was around more, but he was just worked a lot. He still would do anything for me. He's given so much, and here I've been just holding a grudge. And have I ever really truly said thank you? He did exactly what I'd do for my son. Thank you, Dad. I love you.
It's a gut-wrenching monologue, and Nero has time to brood. Unlike Lake, exhausted handling the chimney of his shelter, the shelter that had been gradually improving now faces a major hidden danger because of one inconspicuous chimney, with the true onset of winter drawing ever closer. For a survivor in the Arctic Circle, a chimney is not just a smoke outlet. It's the key to keeping the shelter alive, because once the deep freeze hits, the fire is their only source of heat. Without it, they lose the ability to fight the cold. But once the chimney has issues, smoke can't vent the way it should. It might flood the whole shelter with deadly carbon monoxide. Lake has to rush to fix this tiny-looking issue that's actually a matter of life and death. To shore up the chimney, Lake repeatedly inspects the clay at its base and notices parts of it are still damp from excess moisture. And what worries him most is that a huge crack has already appeared on the surface of the chimney, which means that under constant heat and repeated expansion and contraction, the cracks are very likely to keep widening if he just leaves them alone. All his effort on the shelter might be wiped out by this one chimney, dragging it back into a dangerous state. So Light can only keep adding clay, bit by bit, filling in those weak spots. But fixing the chimney is only step one. The real priority now is getting the shelter's doors and windows in place, because although the shelter already has thick, solid walls, it still wasn't fully enclosed, so cold air could constantly seep inside. And only after putting in the door and adding another layer of insulation, only then can they really say the shelter's ability to hold heat has stepped up a notch, at least in their eyes. Now his foe isn't hunger but time. As the Arctic enters late autumn, his daily working time keeps shrinking as the sun slowly deserts this land. The window of opportunity he has is disappearing bit by bit, so he has to force himself to stay busy, constantly looking for new goals, so that his mind is always locked in problem-solving mode. Because later in the game, what really eats away at them isn't just going hungry anymore. It is a long, psychological battle. And Lake's best approach now is to keep building and perfecting this small world that belongs to him. With the door finally in place, this shelter is really beginning to feel like a true home. Seeing the dwelling take shape, Lake sighs. This place is becoming more and more comfortable, but just when he thinks everything is moving in a better direction, another accident struck. He was about to keep patching the chimney with clay. He saw everything sliding toward the worst-case scenario. Lake's nightmare had just come true. The chimney was badly compromised. In a heartbeat, all his winter survival plans were reset to square one, because no chimney meant no way to keep a fire burning steadily, and no fire at all. Without it, the shelter lost its point. Staring at the cracked chimney, Lake was about to lose it. This wasn't just some minor fix gone wrong. It meant the fruits of dozens of days of effort were now at real risk. But complaining doesn't solve anything in the wild, so Lake quickly pulled himself together and set about reworking the chimney from the ground up, planning to chop off the damaged part entirely and rebuild the chimney into a simpler, sturdier straight stack. It basically trashed most of his earlier work, but at least it might get the system running again. The catch is, tearing it down is even riskier than building it, because one wrong cut could send the whole chimney crashing down. After constant adjustments, Lake finally finished the cut, only to be hit with a new problem. The fire that had burned just fine that morning could no longer vent its smoke. The shelter that had been warm and cozy was trapped with no usable fire. Looking at the situation, Lake sighed helplessly. It might be his worst day since coming into the wild, because he realized he seemed to be stuck in an endless loop. Fix the chimney breaks. Fix it again. And in the Arctic, every single day wasted can add another layer of risk to surviving the coming winter. Even so, for Lake, the real challenge was only just beginning. As the cold deepens, Aaron can feel the wilderness growing steadily colder. At dawn, he wakes to find yesterday's rabbits frozen stiff, hard as stone. Even skinning the rabbit legs is a struggle now. And this cold is really getting to him. Before, he could tell it was just a bit below freezing here, but now things are completely different. As soon as the cold hits, frost quickly forms on his beard, which suggests it's already dropped well past -10. For Aaron, the cold itself isn't the biggest problem. The real issue is that his body keeps burning through energy just to resist this relentless cold. His fingers and toes are growing numb more often now, but at least, the campfire still gives him a final sense of security. As long as the fire burns, he can still thaw himself out, and the 3 rabbits before him also mean he's set for food for now. But Aaron knows rabbit meat alone won't keep him going for long. Rabbits can fill his stomach, but they don't provide much fat. In a winter like this, he needs more than just calories. He needs high-fat foods that can store energy, so he sets his sights on fish. To Aaron, rabbits are like his basic safety net for now, while fish are the real key to lasting in the long run. Yet, in the process of looking for food, an accident happens. Aaron makes a rookie mistake while crafting tools. The gloves he'd set aside to use get scorched right in the fire, and he can't stop swearing at himself. Out here, any piece of gear can determine whether you survive the next few dozen days. Those gloves might seem trivial, but in winter, they're all that stands between your hands and the cold. Luckily, he's got another pair. But the slip-up is a sharp wake-up call for Aaron, because this contest could end in 2 days or last 6 weeks. With the future so uncertain, each choice has to be made even more carefully. As the competition drags into its later stages, Aaron starts to see that what's really changing him isn't just the cold, but his constantly shifting emotions. In the first 30 days, he felt unstoppable, with meat in his pot, a branch roof, and confidence high. But now, as the weather worsens, cracks appear in that resolve. Sometimes the physical exhaustion is still bearable, but the loneliness keeps growing in the silence of the night. That night, Aaron still chooses to light a small fire in his shelter, even though he knows indoor flames are risky. It could cause smoke to build up, or even put the shelter itself in danger. But his hands are numb with cold, and his feet are losing warmth. He doesn't just need warmth, he needs something to pull his mind back into place. As the flames catch, Aaron at last feels some relief. Yet just when he thinks things are turning around, a new problem hits him again. An accidental flare-up throws his shelter into chaos. He realizes there's a serious flaw in the chimney he built. It's too small, so the smoke can't escape, and the shelter meant to protect him has turned into yet another problem. Aaron has to redo the design, has to widen the chimney and rethink the setup. But each new setback chips away at his confidence. The man who once believed he could easily make it to the end feels pressure first time, because the wilderness never goes to plan. The more prepared you are, the more new problems appear to test you. And what Aaron now faces is no longer just cold and hunger, but also those emotions deep inside him that loneliness has magnified. As winter truly sets in, Andrew finally experiences the wilderness at its most brutal. Waking at dawn, he finds the river has begun to freeze, a thick layer of ice covering the surface. Last night's low temperatures bringing on the coldest night since he arrived. Lying in his shelter, Andrew can even hear the eerie sounds of the ice expanding. Those sharp cracks in the ice keep reminding him the season is changing. As the river ices over, the ice fishing plan he'd been counting on is about to become reality. But until the ice fully forms, he can only rely on land resources to keep going. For now, only his rabbit traps can reliably feed him. When Andrew goes to check them, he isn't expecting much. Once snow falls, animals leave fewer tracks. But just when he thinks he'll be heading back empty-handed again, an unexpected surprise appears. A rabbit caught in one of his traps. In that moment, Andrew can't help feeling excited, because in this ever colder wilderness, every rabbit represents another chance to keep going. Soon he finds a second rabbit as well. Taking 2 animals in a single day is an unexpected blessing for someone like Andrew, long reliant on rabbit meat. But he also knows well that rabbits are far from the perfect food. This kind of animal may provide protein. It lacks the fat the body needs most in the dead of winter. If you live on lean meat for too long, your body may burn energy faster than you can replace it. So Andrew doesn't waste any part of the rabbit. Besides the meat, he even eats the organs, because that's where the richer nutrients are hidden. Organs like the brain, kidneys, and liver, once shunned by most people, have become crucial to keeping the body going. Here, food is not high-end or low-end. Anything that keeps you alive is priceless. But just as food stops being a problem for a moment, new trouble appears. Andrew starts having frequent leg cramps. He can't even stay still for a few minutes before his whole body locks up. The sharp pain makes him realize his body is sounding an alarm. He suspects it's linked to his long-term diet and a lack of salt. Out here, any small issue can turn into a deadly crisis.
Cramp. Oh, man. Salt deprivation, I think. Stretches now. Right. Cramp kicking in tonight. Cramp started again. Oh, God.
By morning, he wakes to find land buried by a blizzard. Deep snow doesn't reshape land, it changes his hunting. Snow covers animal tracks and hides his traps. The hunting paths that once fed him are steadily failing him. Andrew realizes that nature is slowly stripping away his only stable food source. No fish, no berries, and now rabbit traps are failing. He's afraid for the first time. Before, hunger was a passing trial. But now the issue is, his body has no reserves left, and his ability to get food is declining. Every step through the deep snow feels like it's draining his life. Andrew begins to wonder, if things stay like this for a month, will he still be able to hold out? For the first time, the thought of pressing the quit button crosses his mind, because going home means a bed, coffee, and an end to this suffering. But Andrew quickly realizes that what really tests a person isn't how many survival skills they've got, but whether they can keep moving forward when everything becomes difficult. When he was younger, he couldn't bear this kind of pain. But now he understands that life itself is a process of constantly facing hardship, and the wild amplifies this trial to the limit. Every day colder, his body weaker. Yet it is precisely in such an environment that a person's resilience is truly tempered. because this wilderness has taught Andrew that real survival is not about avoiding pain, but about choosing to carry on in spite of the pain. Mindset makes the difference in later stages. Ever since Jax went to the lakeshore to make a wish, his gillnet caught a big fish and even gifted him 8 small ones, letting Jax eat grilled fish whenever he wants. Still, he keeps his wish strategy, chanting a wish song at his shelter entrance at dawn.
You gotta believe, you gotta believe, you gotta believe. You gotta believe there's a fish in your trot line. You gotta believe there's a hare in your snare. You gotta believe there's a squirrel hanging from a pole. And a moose is taken with your bow. Come on, everybody, you gotta believe, you gotta believe, you gotta believe. You gotta believe your hair isn't just one knot. You gotta believe your bad guts will go away. You gotta believe you won't be alone forever. You gotta believe you can make it one more night. You gotta believe you can lean into the fight.
Wish granted, he heads to check his traps, and it works too well.
Ooh, we got a hare!
The first trap is less than 10 meters from camp. The rabbit is so close that Jax feels as if it just fell from the sky, costing him no effort. So far, Jax has taken 7 rabbits, still far behind Aaron. Although his recent luck has been very good, he hasn't thought as far ahead as Aaron, and so he hasn't expanded his snare lines to secure more rabbits. For now, just getting 1 rabbit a day is enough to satisfy him, and snagging 2 rabbits in 1 day today really catches Jax off guard. It was his luckiest day yet. He brought the rabbits down, repurposed a mesh net as a sling for the catch. Yesterday he ate grilled fish, and now he'd snagged 2 more rabbits. Jax felt the title inching closer. If he knew that Lake had taken down a caribou, Nero had hunted 2 beavers and started raising fish, or that Aaron had already caught 51 rabbits, I imagine Jax would be in despair. Back at the shelter, Jax put on a pot of rabbit stew to fill his stomach. But just as he was about to taste the meat, the cramped, poorly ventilated shelter trapped all the smoke from the fire. Thick smoke and steam built up inside, soon shrouding the whole place. Even keeping his eyes open to eat became difficult. Too much smoke in the eyes can cause stinging and conjunctivitis, and in extreme cases can rob a person of sight. He thought he was past the worst of his food crisis, but never imagined that such an ordinary issue would almost cost him far more. The scalding steam kept blasting his eyes until he couldn't open them at all. In the end, he crawled out of the shelter just to breathe. After a day of choking on smoke, Jax went back to tweaking his shelter. He widened the top vent again, hoping the smoke from the fire would rush out faster. This adjustment finally paid off. The smoke in the shelter was obviously far less than yesterday. There was still moisture and condensation inside, but at least he could finally breathe normally. More importantly, the shelter stayed pleasantly warm last night, which allowed Jax to see hope again. If the shelter could keep up this level of insulation, then even when the real deep freeze arrives, this shelter might just be able to carry him through. But this bold design is already making Jax pay a price. After days of breathing in smoke and steam, he can clearly feel his eyes getting more and more sensitive. Every time his eyes get smoked out, they take longer to recover, even though it still hasn't reached real pain. Yet the constant irritation is weighing on his mind. If it worsens, this shelter, originally built to fend off bitter cold, could become a survival hazard. And what truly makes Jax anxious isn't just the physical problem. In real life, he is a professional survival skills instructor. He trains people to handle crises and find their way out of danger in harsh environments. Now that he's truly out here, he's finding that teaching survival and enduring this place alone for weeks are 2 very different realities. What's more, from the very beginning, Jax didn't choose the safest shelter design. He took a risk and built this highly challenging semi-underground shelter. As a survival coach, Jax is clearly under far greater psychological pressure than the average contestant. He fears his peers will pick apart his mistakes, and that viewers will scrutinize his every move like a pro. With his mindset reset, Jax begins getting ready for the next round of ice fishing. He cuts some spruce branches, planning to fix them near the ice hole, then let the branches and the fishing line freeze together into the ice, so that even if the surface refreezes overnight, he can quickly locate the line the next day. He cracks the ice again to see if any fish have bitten. As the cold deepens, depending on the shelter alone for warmth won't cut it. What Jax really has to tackle next is still the food problem. Jax had meant to keep working his snare lines, but the sudden snowfall made that effort pointless for now. So he stays in camp instead and sets to work mending the torn gill net. For Jax now, this net is no longer just a tool for catching fish. It may well decide whether he'll have steady food in the coming days. Luckily, time is the one resource the wilderness never lacks. Jax sits in his shelter, patching up the torn mesh line. And as his hands repeat the same simple motions, he finds himself again questioning why he came. These days, his failures, his pride, and others' opinions keep looping in his mind. But Jax slowly realizes that perhaps what this wilderness challenge truly needs to break down is not his body, but the side of him that's always straining to prove his worth. And when he thinks of those young women who, like he once did, doubt themselves, Jax suddenly feels that his experience might be able to tell them something. Life is not a script written by someone else. Even if your past has defined you, you can still take back the pen and rewrite the road ahead. And this journey in the wild is slowly helping Jax lay down a weight he's carried for years. Yet he doesn't notice that the real crisis that will end this journey has already begun to quietly surface. That night, as the stove is lit again, smoke starts to build up in the shelter once more, and Jax quickly realizes his eyes can't take the smoke anymore. The searing sting makes it nearly impossible to open them. He'd hoped to finish mending the gillnet, but his sight quickly smears into a blur until he can barely make out what's in his hands. The time he once most looked forward to each day now becomes pure torment, because only by lighting the stove can he get warmth, boil water, and cook food. Yet at the same time, every flare of the fire produces smoke that keeps aggravating his already injured eyes. If he wants warmth, he must grit through the pain. If he wants to escape the smoke, he has to abandon the only steady heat in his shelter. First time, Jax is trapped in a vicious circle impossible to break. Soon, the burning in his eyes grows so intense he can't open them, even though night is still far off. Without his sight, Jax can't do anything anymore. He can only lie down early, hoping that after a night's rest, his eyes will return to normal. But after a full hour or two, not only is there no improvement, the situation gets worse.
Oh my god, my eyes!
He can pry his right eye open slightly, while the left stings like it was scraped. The instant he cracks it open, the sting sends his tears pouring, and everything in front of him has turned into a blur. Jax considers using a syringe from the kit to flush his eyes. But the problem is right now he can't rely on his vision, let alone light a fire, boil water, and sterilize. That's where the real threat is. Out here in this kind of cold, losing his sight isn't just about making it harder to move around. He can't split firewood, can't manage his fire, can't search for food. Leaving the shelter and moving around could lead to an accident. The survival skills he once took pride in become almost meaningless once his vision is gone. As a survival instructor, Jax admits the whole ordeal leaves him deeply ashamed, but the wild never cuts anyone slack just for being an expert. Staying on isn't perseverance, it's gambling recklessly with his body. At last, Jax makes the choice he's dreaded most. He reaches for the satellite communicator, he radios in his decision to quit, and sits tight for rescue. He packs snow and gauze and lays it over his eyes to soothe the pain. But what truly torments Jax is not just the pain in his eyes. He spent his whole life driving himself forward, wearing toughness like armor to keep himself safe. He knows to guide others through danger, yet has rarely learned to care for himself. This time, when the choice is only to keep competing or to protect himself, for the first time, Jax chooses, realizing walking away isn't always defeat. Sometimes, stopping at the right moment is itself a way of surviving. This wilderness didn't send him home with a trophy. Instead, it let him finally face a self he'd never accepted. That self who doesn't need to prove to anyone and doesn't need to stay strong always. The Jax of the past had always lived wrapped in a heavy suit of armor. But after coming here, the wilderness slowly peeled away that armor. Let him see his own fears and weaknesses, and let him truly choose to accept all of this for the first time. So for Jax, pressing the withdrawal button is not the greatest regret of this journey. On the contrary, it's the first time he stopped pushing himself just to match who others think he should be. Instead, it is about choosing to protect the true self. The champion proves how long one has persevered in the wilderness. But what Jax gained was another answer. One rarer. True strength has never been about never falling, but about having the courage to choose yourself when it's time to let go.